My name is Isabella Moore, and I'm 30 years old. I've always been the one to hold my family together. Growing up, I was the one who made sure birthdays were celebrated, that we had family dinners, and that we all stayed connected despite the distance between us. But nothing prepared me for what happened on the most important day of my life, my wedding day. It was supposed to be the happiest day. I was in my ivory dress, the one I had picked out after months of searching, standing beside my soon-to-be husband, Henry. We were about to cut our wedding cake, surrounded by friends and a few family members on his side, when it hit me, the realization that my entire family, the people I had always dreamed would be there, weren't. No parents. No siblings. Not even a distant cousin. The room was filled with claps and cheers, but all I could hear was the pounding in my chest. A hollow feeling settled in my gut, and for a moment, I wondered if the cake in front of me would be the last thing I'd ever taste in peace. I felt alone. Henry squeezed my hand. He could tell something was wrong. I tried to force a smile, but it didn't come. As we pressed the knife into the frosting, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from my mom. "We need to talk now." Below the message, there were 25 missed calls from both her and my dad. I felt the knot in my stomach tighten. Before I could process the fear and anxiety welling up in me, I excused myself and stepped outside. I needed a moment to breathe, to think. "I'll just step out for a minute," I whispered to Henry, trying to sound casual, but the tremor in my voice betrayed me. He nodded, but I could see the concern in his eyes. He knew something was wrong, but I wasn't ready to tell him yet. Not in front of everyone. I stood by the reception area, taking deep breaths, before I finally opened my phone. I called my mom, feeling a sense of dread settle over me. She answered on the second ring. "Isabella. Where are you? You're missing the ceremony." She sounded frantic. "Mom," I said, my voice shaking, "I need to know where you are. Where's Dad? Why aren't you here?" There was a long pause before she responded. "Sweetheart, we're so sorry. We couldn't make it." "What?" My heart dropped into my stomach. "What do you mean, you couldn't make it?" She hesitated, then continued, "There's a family emergency. Your father, he couldn't come. We have to deal with it." I froze, trying to comprehend what she was saying. A family emergency. My wedding day. I could feel my hands shaking as I clutched the phone tightly. "I need you here," I managed to say. But it was too late. I already knew. They weren't coming. Not even to watch me walk down the aisle. I hung up without saying anything more. There was nothing else to say. My parents, the people who had always been my rock, had abandoned me on the most important day of my life. I took another deep breath, trying to keep the tears from streaming down my face. The weight of the situation crashed down on me. Henry deserved better. Our wedding deserved better. But I couldn't change it now. I headed back inside, trying to compose myself before facing the guests again. My hands were still shaking. The guests, mostly Henry's family, were chatting and laughing. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask them all how they could stand there, so oblivious, while I was falling apart inside. But instead, I smiled. I walked back to Henry, who was waiting with a confused expression. He could see it on my face. "Is everything okay?" he asked, his voice soft. "Yeah. It's fine," I lied. I didn't want to ruin this moment for him. He was my everything. But deep down, a part of me was already breaking. You might be wondering, why didn't I just ask them why they weren't coming? The truth is, I had tried. I had called, I had sent messages, and when that didn't work, I tried to be understanding. After all, I knew my parents could be complicated. They were never really emotional. But this was different. This was more than just an oversight. This felt like an abandonment. But it wasn't just my parents. It was my sister too. Amelia. My younger sister. She'd been my best friend growing up. We shared everything, our secrets, our dreams, our fears. She was supposed to be my maid of honor. I had chosen her to stand beside me, to help me plan this day, to share it with me. And yet, she wasn't there either. The day before the wedding, when I asked her to help me with last-minute details, she had promised she'd be there. She'd sounded so excited. But when I called her the morning of the wedding, I was met with silence. No answer. No response. It wasn't until much later that I found out the truth. Amelia had decided to take a last-minute trip with her friends. She'd gone off to some beach resort, leaving me to deal with everything on my own. No text. No apology. Just silence. I couldn't come and say, "I'm sorry," she later texted me. But I had plans already, and I didn't want to miss it. I stared at her message, feeling the sting of betrayal all over again. Plans? What plans? Why had she prioritized a trip over me? Over my wedding? It hurt more than I could put into words. And so, I stood there. Alone. On my wedding day. I walked down the aisle without my parents, without my sister, without anyone from my family. The pain was overwhelming. It felt like everything I had worked so hard for, everything I had dreamed about for years, was slipping away. My family had abandoned me. But there was one thing I knew for sure, I wasn't truly alone. Henry was by my side. And though my family wasn't there physically, I had the love of the people who truly mattered in my life. They may not have been blood, but they were the ones who showed up. They were the ones who cared. Still, the emptiness gnawed at me. As the ceremony continued, I forced myself to focus on the present. I couldn't change the past, but I could still make this day meaningful. For me. For Henry. For the love we had found in each other. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. If you've ever felt betrayed by your family, or if you've had to face a similar situation, I'd love to hear your story. Leave a comment below, share your experience, and let me know how you navigated through those tough moments. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Dear Karma for more real-life experiences and stories of growth, healing, and learning from our toughest moments. As the evening went on, I tried to shake the unease from my chest. The guests were still laughing and dancing, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. The cake had been cut, the first dance had happened, and now we were just going through the motions of what was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. But there was a heaviness in my heart, something I couldn't shake, no matter how hard I tried to smile. I couldn't stop thinking about my parents. How could they do this to me? How could they not be here, on my wedding day? I had spent my whole life trying to make them proud, to be the daughter they wanted, but nothing seemed to be enough. When I was younger, I worked hard in school, excelling in everything, hoping that one day they'd look at me the way they looked at my younger brother, Max. He could do no wrong. He was the golden child. I remember the praise he got, the way their eyes would light up whenever he walked into the room, like he could do no wrong. I'd always been the good one, the one who followed the rules, who made sure everyone else was taken care of. But even as I did everything right, it never seemed to matter. They never looked at me the way they looked at him. And for years, I thought that maybe I was just too much of a perfectionist, expecting too much from them. Maybe I was too hard on myself. But now, I couldn't help but think that all the love and praise had always been reserved for Max. When I was younger, I thought I'd get their attention by doing the right things, but the more I did, the more I felt invisible. He didn't have to try as hard, and yet it was always him they celebrated. I excelled academically, won awards, and graduated with honors, but it was always Max who got the spotlight. I remember sitting at my own high school graduation, watching my parents beam with pride at him, as if my achievements didn't even matter. I'd worked so hard to get there, but in that moment, I realized that no matter what I did, it would never be enough. And I had resigned myself to that. So, when I got engaged to Henry, I had hoped, foolishly, that this time would be different. I thought, this is it. This is the moment they will finally see me. They'll finally care about my happiness, my future. Maybe this is the moment they'll show up for me. But they didn't. I thought they would come around. After all, we had been planning the wedding for months, and I had given them every opportunity to be a part of it. I sent out invitations early, called them regularly, and even made sure they had everything they needed for the day. I didn't want a big, extravagant wedding. I just wanted a small, intimate ceremony with people I loved, people who truly cared about me. I thought they would be there. I thought they had to be there. But when I called them the morning of my wedding, it all fell apart. My mom had sounded distracted, as if she were dealing with something more important than her daughter's wedding day. I tried to convince myself that maybe it was just pre-wedding stress, but when she told me they wouldn't be coming because of some family emergency, something inside me snapped. I should have pressed her more. I should have asked what was really going on, but I didn't. I just assumed the worst and tried to brush it off. It wasn't until later, when I found out that my brother, Max, had been at a golf tournament with his friends that weekend, while I was sitting at my wedding, all alone, that everything clicked. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't ignore the truth. My parents had chosen him over me, again. For years, Max had been the one to call the shots in our family. If he didn't want to go to a family event, no one made him. If he didn't want to do something, it just didn't happen. It was always about him. And I had always been the one to make excuses for them, to say, it's just the way they are. They're just busy. They're not perfect, but they love me in their own way. But now, I saw it for what it was, neglect. Pure and simple. I couldn't stop myself from feeling angry. How could they do this to me? All the years of trying to gain their approval, of putting their happiness before mine, and this is how they repay me. It hurt more than I thought possible. But then came the moment that shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. During the reception, I got a message from my mom. At first, I thought it was another one of those "we're so sorry we couldn't make it" texts, but this one was different. This one said, "We need to talk when you get back. It's important. We've made a mistake." I stared at the screen, my stomach dropping. What could they possibly have to say to me now? I had been ignoring their calls all day, not wanting to let their disappointment ruin the one good thing I had left. But this was different. The message was laced with guilt, and I could feel the weight of it through the words. I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't. I had to know what they had to say. So, I stepped outside again, trying to find some quiet space away from the party. I dialed my mom's number, trying to steady my breath. When she picked up, I could hear the tears in her voice immediately. "Izzy, I need you to know how sorry we are. We've been so wrong." The words felt hollow, empty. "What are you talking about? We shouldn't have let Max's schedule affect everything. We thought you would understand, that we had to be there for him. But we shouldn't have made you feel like you weren't a priority." I felt my breath catch in my throat. They hadn't even shown up because they had prioritized my brother. They had abandoned me for him, once again. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I don't know what you expect me to say right now. You weren't here. You weren't here for me when I needed you most." There was a long silence on the other end. I could tell she was crying, but it didn't matter. It didn't make the situation any better. They had missed my wedding day, and nothing they said could change that. When I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but feel a cold wave of emptiness wash over me. How could they do this? After everything, after all the years of putting their happiness first, I was left standing there, alone on my wedding day. But as I stood there, staring at the phone in my hand, I realized something else. This wasn't just about them. It wasn't just about my parents. It was about me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to apologize for wanting them to care. I wasn't going to feel guilty for needing them to show up. I deserved better than this. And I had to accept that, no matter how hard it was. The rest of the night passed in a blur. The guests danced, laughed, and celebrated, but all I could hear was the deafening silence from my family's absence. Henry tried his best to cheer me up, but every time he smiled, I couldn't help but think of the empty chairs at the front of the room. The places that should have been filled by my parents, by my brother, by the people who were supposed to be there, supporting me. They weren't coming. And as much as I wanted to deny it, the truth kept creeping back. I had spent so many years trying to be the daughter they could be proud of, the one who did everything right, the one who was always there, always supporting them. But it never seemed to be enough. And that night, as I stood there, surrounded by people who loved me, I realized that maybe I had been chasing something I could never have, a family that could love me unconditionally, without strings attached. I watched Henry talking to his cousins across the room, and the contrast between how they treated him and how my family had treated me was so stark, it almost physically hurt. They laughed with him, included him in everything, made him feel like he was part of the family from day one. And here I was, standing alone, trying to make sense of the shattered pieces of a family that never really accepted me the way I had hoped. I had always known there was something off, but I had never fully accepted it until now. This was the culmination of a lifetime of trying to gain their approval, of doing everything I thought was necessary to be seen, to be loved. But the harsh reality was that I had spent my life fighting for a place at a table that I would never truly belong to. Henry noticed the sadness in my eyes as I tried to hold back tears. He came over and wrapped his arms around me, pulling me close. "Isabella, I know this is hard. But you are not alone," he said softly, his voice steady, comforting. "You don't need them to validate your happiness. You have me. And you have all these people here who love you." And as he said those words, something clicked inside me. I didn't need my parents' approval. I didn't need my brother's attention. I had spent so long trying to fit into a family that wasn't capable of loving me the way I deserved, and maybe it was time to stop trying. Maybe it was time to let go of the idea of the perfect family and accept that my worth wasn't defined by their inability to see it. But as the night wore on, and the celebration continued, I realized that it wasn't just the absence of my family that hurt, it was their complete indifference. Their lack of care, their lack of effort to even show up, to make it right. That was what cut the deepest. They hadn't just missed my wedding day. They had missed years of my life, the moments that mattered to me, the moments I had shared with them in the hope of building something real. They had chosen to stay distant, and now, even as I stood at the crossroads of this new chapter of my life, they still refused to show up for me. After the wedding, I tried to keep my head high, but the sadness stayed with me. I would check my phone, hoping for a message from my mom or my dad, anything that would make me feel like they hadn't completely written me off. But each time, there was nothing. I sent messages, I left voicemails, and all I received were excuses. "We're sorry, we just didn't realize how important this was. We had other plans, Isabella." It wasn't personal. How could they say that? How could they expect me to believe that their absence was just some misunderstanding, some mishap? They knew what they were doing. They had known what they were doing for years, every time they prioritized Max, every time they brushed off my accomplishments, every time they put their attention elsewhere, leaving me to handle things on my own. It wasn't just a missed wedding. It was a lifetime of emotional neglect. And as I sat in the quiet of our apartment, with Henry beside me, I couldn't help but wonder if this was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when I realized I would never get what I wanted from them. I had spent years holding out hope that they would change, that one day they would see me the way I had always hoped. But now, I knew that change wasn't coming. It wasn't coming because they weren't capable of it. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how deep the wounds went. The scars I had been carrying for years, those invisible marks that no one else could see, were more than just memories. They were the product of years of emotional neglect. I had been taught to believe that I wasn't enough, that my accomplishments didn't matter, and that my happiness wasn't a priority. But now, I could see it clearly. I had been trying to earn their love and approval all my life, and I had been doing it at the cost of my own self-worth. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. I had been waiting for something that was never going to come. I had been waiting for my parents to see me, to validate me, to love me unconditionally. But they were never going to be the parents I wanted. They had never been that for me. And I had spent too much time, too much of my life, waiting for them to change. Henry saw the shift in me. He saw the realization settle over me, the weight lifting from my shoulders, the moment when I understood that I didn't need their approval anymore. "I'm so proud of you, Isabella," he said, his voice filled with pride and love. "You don't need anyone but yourself to know your worth." And in that moment, I knew he was right. I didn't need them. I didn't need to keep chasing after a family that wasn't going to give me the love and respect I deserved. I had Henry. I had the people who truly saw me. And for the first time in my life, I felt at peace. But peace didn't mean forgetting. Peace didn't mean that the hurt went away. It meant that I was ready to heal, to let go of the things that had held me back for so long. I wasn't going to keep carrying their rejection anymore. It was time to set it down. To stop looking back and to start looking forward, towards a future that was mine, that I had built for myself. I wasn't going to keep hoping for something from them that I would never get. And that was the hardest part to accept, that even if they came back, even if they apologized, it would never be the same. The damage had been done, and I couldn't unfeel what I had already felt. But what I could do was rebuild. I could create a new family with the people who loved me, the ones who were there for me, the ones who celebrated me. Months passed after that day, and as the dust settled, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened, everything that had led me to that moment. I had been to hell and back, but somehow, I had made it out the other side stronger. It wasn't easy, nothing ever is, but I realized that the hardest thing I had to do wasn't standing up to my family or confronting them about their hurtful behavior. It was finally accepting that I didn't need them to be whole. It had taken a long time for me to come to terms with the idea that I wasn't the problem, that I didn't have to fix everything, that I wasn't the one who had to keep making excuses for them. For years, I had convinced myself that if I just tried harder, if I just did more, they would see me, appreciate me, love me in the way I had always wanted. But I realized something that I had never truly understood before. I didn't need their validation to be valid. It was a powerful realization, and it came with a sense of liberation I never thought I would feel. I was finally free from the endless cycle of trying to win approval from people who would never give it. And that freedom was the best gift I could have ever given myself. When Henry and I moved into our new home, it was like a fresh start. I no longer felt the weight of my family's expectations, their neglect, or the constant battle for recognition. I had my own life now, one that I was building with Henry, brick by brick. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever is. But it was ours. It was real. And that was enough. Our wedding day, the day that had started with so much pain, had ended up being the catalyst for change I hadn't even known I needed. In a way, it was the day I stopped caring about what my family thought of me and started living for myself, for the life I was creating with Henry. I had learned to appreciate the love I had, genuine, unconditional love from the people who chose me, who supported me, and who stood by me through everything. Still, it wasn't easy to completely let go. There were moments, like on holidays or when I would see families gathered together, that the old feelings would creep back in. I would wonder if things could have been different, if my family had only understood, if they had seen me for who I was. But as time went on, those moments became less frequent, and when they did come, I could face them with a sense of calm. Because now I knew, truly knew, that I was enough without their approval. And then came the day when I received the call I had been dreading and hoping for at the same time. My mom. She had reached out after all this time, after months of silence. At first, I didn't know if I should pick up the phone. I thought about all the pain they had caused, all the ways they had let me down, and I wondered if I was ready to hear whatever they had to say. I took a deep breath and answered. Izzy, I know it's been a while, and I don't expect you to forgive us just like that. But I need you to know how sorry we are. We were wrong. I was wrong. Her voice trembled, and for the first time in a long while, I could hear the regret in it. For the first time, it felt like she was speaking to me, not just as a mother but as a person who had genuinely failed her daughter. I've been thinking a lot about everything, about what we did, about how we treated you. I realize now that we never showed you how proud we are of you. And I need you to know. I need you to know that we love you, Izzy. And we're sorry. For a moment, I was speechless. I didn't know what to say. I had spent so many years hoping for this moment, but now that it was here, I wasn't sure I even wanted it anymore. My emotions were a whirlwind. But as the silence stretched, I realized something. I didn't need her apology to be okay. I had already healed. I had already moved on. Mom, I said, my voice calm, but firm. I appreciate you reaching out, but I need you to understand something. I've come to a place where I no longer need to seek your approval. I've learned to love myself, and I've created a life that makes me happy. I'm not sure where we go from here, but I'm not that same person anymore. There was a long pause on the other end. I wasn't sure how she was processing what I had said, but I knew it was the truth. I had spent so many years waiting for her to see me, to love me the way I needed to be loved, but now I realized that I didn't need to wait anymore. I didn't need to wait for their love to feel worthy. I had found my worth in myself, and no one could take that from me. I understand, she said softly. And I want you to know, we'll do better. We'll try. But we're not going to rush anything. We'll take it one step at a time. No pressure, just, when you're ready. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. And for the first time, I felt like I could breathe. I knew there would be setbacks, more awkward conversations, and possibly more hurt. But for the first time, I wasn't holding my breath for anything from them. I wasn't waiting for them to change. Henry and I had our own life now. We were building something that mattered, something real. And in that life, I was whole, and I didn't need anything else to complete me. We didn't need to rebuild the past. We needed to build the future. And that was all that mattered. Have you ever had to let go of the expectations of your family or loved ones? How did you find the strength to move on and start building a life that truly makes you happy? Let me know your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, be sure to like and subscribe to Dear Karma for more real-life experiences and stories of growth and healing. Thank you for being a part of my journey, and remember, your worth is never defined by anyone else's approval.